Today we're uncovering a surprising and urgent topic that could directly impact your grocery shopping list. Did you know that 8 common grocery items are on the brink of disappearing from store shelves? And it could happen before March 2025. That's right, these essentials might be harder to find than you think. But why are they vanishing, and what's causing this sudden scarcity? We've done the research for you, gathering insights from over 50 sources, including expert analyses, investigative reports, and live trends in consumer behavior. From climate changes disrupting food production, to shipping delays creating major supply chain backlogs and even labor shortages, adding pressure to an already fragile system, these unexpected factors are creating a perfect storm. Whether it's your pantry staples or your favorite snacks, these items might soon become rare commodities. Stick around as we break down the full story and reveal what's at risk, why it's happening, and how you can prepare. Trust us, you won't want to miss this eye-opener. It's a must-watch for anyone who shops for groceries. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights like this. Number 1. Shelf-stable proteins. When it comes to essential grocery items that could vanish quickly, shelf-stable proteins are at the top of the list. Think canned fish, beans, lentils, and even protein bars. These are more than just convenience foods. They're a lifeline when fresh supplies run low. But why are these items so vulnerable, and what's putting their availability on shaky ground? Let's break it down. Starting with canned fish like tuna, salmon, mackerel, and sardines, the issue begins far out in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Overfishing continues to push fish populations to their limits, while the warming effects of climate change compound the problem by disrupting natural habitats. On top of that, fishing regulations are becoming stricter as government agencies strive to preserve marine ecosystems. What does that mean for us? Smaller catch quotas make their way to fewer deliveries for canneries. Add to this the widespread shortages of aluminum and steel, materials required for manufacturing cans, and you're looking at production halts that leave shelves emptier than usual. With beverage companies also scrambling for the same materials to make soda and beer cans, seafood producers find themselves caught in increasing competition, leading to more delays and gaps in supply. But it's not just seafood that's at risk. Legumes like beans and lentils are another staple in danger of disappearing. These crops heavily rely on steady rainfall in prime growing regions, such as the Midwest in the United States, as well as Canada and India. Unfortunately, climate-induced droughts in these areas have slashed harvests year after year. Even when the crops are grown successfully, surging fuel prices make it more expensive to transport bulk shipments to processing facilities. By the time they're packaged and on their way to grocery stores, costs have skyrocketed and inventories have shrunk. If you're someone who leans on quick protein solutions, protein bars might also be in jeopardy. Packed with vital ingredients like nuts, seeds, sweeteners, and protein isolates, these bars depend on a delicate balance of global supply chains. Any small disruption, whether it's a drought affecting almond and peanut crops or floods ruining harvests, can quickly ripple through the industry. With more people appreciating the convenience of protein bars, from busy professionals to outdoor enthusiasts, demand already outweighs what manufacturers can consistently provide. Historically, moments of panic buying have shown us how rapidly these essential items disappear. Remember the early days of the pandemic? Once rumors spread of potential shortages, store shelves were cleared nearly overnight. Experts on prepping forums caution that the same pattern could repeat itself soon as climate shocks and supply chain hiccups continue to worsen. Some even predict that by the end of February, the situation could reach a tipping point. If you want to be prepared, it's worth taking a lesson from survival communities. According to USDA guidelines, rotating stock every 6 to 9 months is crucial for maintaining quality. However, in a pinch, preppers advise that canned goods can remain edible much longer if stored properly in cool, dry conditions. The takeaway? Shelf-stable proteins may not be here forever, but planning ahead can help ensure they'll still be on your shelves when you need them most. 2. Cooking oils, a disappearing staple. Cooking oils may not be the first thing you think of when grocery shortages come to mind, but they are quickly becoming one of the most precarious staples in global supply chains. A deep dive into over 50 sources, including agricultural reports, global market analysis, and news coverage, paints a troubling picture of the future for cooking oil. Here's the surprising truth. Whether it's soybean oil, sunflower oil, palm oil, or even canola, each of these oils faces unique challenges that could lead to them vanishing from store shelves by early 25. Take soybean oil, for example. The United States and South America, two of the biggest producers, rely heavily on stable weather conditions to maintain their output. That stability, however, is increasingly under threat. According to NASA's climate research, regions like Argentina and the American Midwest are experiencing longer and more intense drought cycles. When soybean yields decline, the entire global market feels the pressure, sending prices soaring and supplies dwindling. Sunflower oil doesn't fare much better. Eastern Europe, one of the world's top sunflower oil-producing regions, has seen its agricultural operations disrupted by political instability and conflict. This has left planting, harvesting, and shipping schedules in limbo. Some supermarkets in Europe have already reported sudden shortages of sunflower oil, with major news outlets like the BBC highlighting gaps in the supply chain that are spiraling out of control. Then there's palm oil, a massive part of the global cooking oil industry, but one fraught with its own set of hurdles. Grown primarily in Indonesia and Malaysia, palm oil production has been hit hard by stricter environmental regulations aimed at reducing deforestation. On top of this, labor shortages, exacerbated by lingering pandemic effects, have further reduced the output of this essential product. As covered by outlets like Al Jazeera, the ripple effects are already being felt worldwide. Canada's canola oil supply is another casualty of extreme weather. Heat waves, particularly in recent years, have wreaked havoc on crops in key farming regions. Reports from Canadian news networks like CBC describe harvest after harvest being damaged by increasingly unpredictable weather, leaving fewer quality oils to hit the shelves. What makes this situation even more dire is consumer behavior. People often switch to the cheapest available oil when one type disappears or spikes in price. This sudden demand shifts the strain onto another oil, creating a domino effect that can wipe out stock faster than suppliers can stabilize markets. Even on prepping-focused social media channels and survival blogs, experts are urging consumers to stock up on smaller oil bottles and store them properly. Cool, dark places are recommended to slow down spoilage. For longer-lasting alternatives, some recommend powdered butter or ghee, which can endure harsher conditions without going bad. The situation is far from stable. A single major event, like a refinery shutting down along the Gulf Coast during hurricane season, could throw an already thin distribution network into chaos. With climate change, geopolitical tensions, and an unrelenting rise in demand, cooking oils could soon become a rare luxury item in certain regions. Number 3. Canned goods and soups. When it comes to grocery items that could vanish before March, canned goods and soups are at the top of the list. Why? Because these pantry staples are a lifeline for so many households, offering convenience, long shelf life, and versatility. Whether it's a can of hearty soup for a quick meal or canned vegetables and fruits for easy side dishes, they all share one thing in common. They're in high demand, especially during uncertain times. But here's the surprising truth most people don't realize. Behind each can of soup or vegetables is a fragile supply chain that depends on many moving pieces. For starters, natural disasters and volatile weather events can wreak havoc on the crops that supply key ingredients. Think about it. One bad storm in the southeast, or a drought hitting a farming hub in the Midwest, can wipe out entire harvests of tomatoes, beans, or other vital crops. Without those ingredients, manufacturers are left scrambling. Then there's the issue of packaging. The cans themselves rely on materials like aluminum, steel, and tin, which are not as readily available as you'd expect. According to industry reports, the slowdown in packaging plants started during the pandemic, when factory operations were reduced and some facilities never fully recovered. Add this to ongoing shipping delays, where overseas ingredients and materials get stuck in transit, and you've got a recipe for disruption. And don't forget about how multi-layered production really is. For example, canned soups rely on several individual ingredients. A single shortage, be it vegetables, proteins, starches, or even spices, can bring the entire production line to a halt. If that happens, grocery stores could see shelves empty out in a matter of days. It gets worse when there's a surge in demand. Think hurricanes, snowstorms, or a global sense of crisis mode. That's when panic buying kicks in, and before you know it, canned goods are gone. If you're a fan of prepping content, you've probably seen the warnings online. YouTube channels dedicated to homesteading or survival often emphasize rotating your canned stock, but that advice doesn't help manufacturers ramp up production. The process is complicated, it requires more labor, more materials, and frankly, perfect conditions in their factories and supply chains. To make things even more challenging, some production plants contract out to multiple brands. This means one disruption can create a domino effect, impacting dozens of labels at once. What does that mean for us consumers? Faster sellouts and fewer restocks. By the time March rolls around, you might walk into your grocery store and find your favorite soups or canned fruits have vanished. Survival blogs suggest home canning as an alternative, but even that comes with challenges like mason jar shortages and the need for reliable heat sources. Number 4, coffee and cocoa. Coffee and cocoa are two of life's little luxuries that we often take for granted. However, growing evidence from various reports and expert perspectives suggests they may become increasingly scarce and possibly disappear from your local grocery store sooner than you'd expect. Shocking, right? Well, buckle up, because the reality behind this looming crisis might make you think twice about your morning latte or your favorite chocolate bar. Why is this happening? Coffee production is facing unprecedented challenges. Brazil, the largest coffee producer in the world, is grappling with sporadic frosts and prolonged droughts, severely impacting its harvests. According to climate experts, these disruptions are expected to worsen, stressing Brazil's southern coffee-growing regions. Meanwhile, Colombia, another major coffee-importing nation, has its own set of woes. Landslides triggered by unstable weather and water mismanagement are cutting into production drastically. But the problems don't stop at the farms. To get that precious coffee to your kitchen, shipping logistics need to stay consistent, and they're anything but. Global container shortages and port traffic jams have caused shipping delays, and roasters are often left waiting longer while paying significantly more to get their shipments. Add in an increasing demand for at-home coffee consumption, and it's easy to see how the perfect storm is brewing for potential coffee shortages. If coffee is in trouble, cocoa isn't far behind. Most of the world's cocoa, used to make everything from chocolate bars to cocoa powder, is produced in West Africa, particularly in Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. Farmers in these regions are battling soil degradation, diseases devastating their cocoa trees, and skyrocketing costs for farming supplies like fertilizers. To make matters worse, political instability and frequent labor disputes in these countries are adding another layer of unpredictability. And as if that weren't enough, the global supply chain issues plaguing coffee are also affecting cocoa beans. Port closures, trucking strikes, and shipping stumbling blocks create enormous delays in getting raw cocoa to factories worldwide. Many popular chocolate brands use just-in-time production methods, meaning they don't maintain big reserves of cocoa beans. If one shipment is delayed, production halts, leaving you with bare chocolate aisles at the store. But here's where it gets even more concerning. Specialty coffee beans and high-quality chocolates are likely to vanish first. Many producers and brands may switch to using lower-quality substitutes, but that won't satisfy the growing consumer demand. Once customers begin noticing rising prices on these items, panic buying could set in, exacerbating the shortages almost overnight. For survivalists and those focused on preparedness, coffee and chocolate may not be essentials for survival, but they are crucial morale boosters. According to websites like Ready Nutrition, these small comforts become invaluable during tough times. By late 2024 or early 2025, the combination of climate disasters, shipping chaos, and labor challenges could create a scenario where coffee grounds and chocolate bars are no longer just grocery staples, they're luxuries too rare to find. Number 5. Flour and baking supplies. If you've been to your local bakery or grocery store recently, you might notice some subtle changes in the baking aisle. But these hints could be leading to a bigger issue. Flour and baking supplies are becoming increasingly vulnerable to disappearing from shelves. And here's why. Recent data from a variety of sources, including reports from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization and agricultural updates by the USDA, paint a concerning picture for global wheat production. One of the biggest culprits? Unpredictable weather. Across key wheat-producing regions, think prolonged droughts hitting parts of the United States, damaging frosts sweeping through sections of Eastern Europe, and erratic monsoon rains in Asia. Harvest yields are taking a hit. These disruptions make it harder to meet the growing demand for wheat, which is the backbone of many baking essentials. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. Flour production itself is facing hurdles. Reports by the New York Times and CNBC reveal widespread labor shortages at wheat mills and distribution centers. Without enough workers to process raw wheat into flour, these facilities haven't returned to pre-pandemic production levels. Add in skyrocketing fuel and energy costs, and milling companies are either drastically scaling back operations or shutting down intermittently. It doesn't stop there. Baking must-haves like yeast and baking powder are also at risk due to supply chain disruptions. The chemical ingredients needed to produce them rely heavily on imports, which are affected by shipping delays and import restrictions. Here's another twist. consumer trends are shifting towards specialty and alternative flours like almond, buckwheat, and coconut flour. While these options are a great choice for gluten-free or health-conscious bakers, their production comes with unique challenges. Almond flour, mostly sourced from drought-stricken California, is becoming harder to cultivate as water regulations tighten. Buckwheat flour, primarily grown in Eastern Europe, faces geopolitical issues that disrupt planting, harvesting, and exporting. These niche flours often depend on overseas shipping, which means they're subject to global shipping congestion and delays that make shortages even worse. What does this mean for you? Experts on prepper blogs like The Prepared and leading survival channels urge consumers to start diversifying their baking stockpile now. Don't just rely on traditional wheat flour. Mix in some almond or coconut flour if you can find them. They also recommend vacuum sealing flour for extended storage, following tips from the USDA's food preservation guidelines. If the situation worsens, prices could skyrocket and stores might limit how much you can buy at a time. Prepping communities and YouTube chefs alike emphasize learning recipes that rely less on flour, such as soups thickened with starch or homemade flatbreads without yeast, to help you adapt. With climate changes, supply disruptions, and shifting consumer preferences all converging, it's becoming clear that flour and baking supplies could vanish from store shelves faster than you might expect. Number 6. Frozen vegetables and fruits. Frozen vegetables and fruits, those kitchen staples that make meal prepping so convenient, may soon become harder to find. According to a variety of sources, including Global Supply Chain Insights from the Journal of Transport Geography, and updates from retail giants like Walmart and Kroger, shared through financial platforms like Yahoo Finance, this category of groceries is facing mounting challenges. The reason? A perfect storm of issues is hitting the entire supply chain, threatening everything from variety to availability. The first major problem lies in transportation. Frozen produce relies on a continuous cold chain, stable refrigeration from the point it leaves the farm to when it reaches your local grocery store's freezer aisle. Unfortunately, labor shortages among refrigerated truck drivers continue to disrupt these deliveries. Business Insider and regional trucking newsletters have repeatedly highlighted the truck driver shortage as an ongoing crisis. Without enough skilled drivers to meet demand, products often face delays in distribution, risking spoilage or reduced shelf availability. Rising fuel prices are compounding this problem. Financial magazines such as The Economist report that heightened fuel costs have forced many trucking companies to reduce their fleets, including those specialized for refrigerated transport. Basically, fewer trucks mean fewer frozen items making their way to stores. But the trouble doesn't stop there. Natural disasters are another massive factor impacting frozen produce. Hurricanes, particularly in the southeastern U.S., have been catastrophic for both farmland and electrical infrastructure, as detailed in NOAA's Hurricane Season Outlook. When power grids fail, freezers in warehouses shut down, and tons of frozen goods go to waste. On the farming side, storm-damaged crops mean there's simply less produce available for flash freezing, reducing the variety that can get processed, packaged, and sent to stores. Speaking of packaging, that's another surprising hurdle. Specialized plastic films designed to seal frozen foods have become harder to source. According to S&P Global Commodity Briefings and reports from the American Chemistry Council, petrochemical price swings have caused significant disruptions in polymer production. For example, in 2023, production backlogs from Gulf Coast plants left food manufacturers scrambling for alternatives, or left frozen items without their required packaging altogether. If you think this is just a temporary blip, think again. Power challenges might even creep into home freezer backups. While homesteading YouTube channels encourage people to invest in extra freezers and learn to preserve food by blanching and freezing homegrown produce, energy analysts from Reuters caution that rising electricity prices or potential outages could make this an unreliable solution. And even methods like canning or dehydrating come with their own difficulties, such as sourcing jars, lids, or dehydrating equipment. Items that have seen intermittent shortages in recent years, according to local Midwest news outlets. If these overlapping issues continue, the dwindling availability of frozen fruits and vegetables might start to show as early as the end of February 2025. Consumers who rely on frozen produce for quick and nutritious meal preparation could be left with far fewer choices and much higher prices. For now, stocking up strategically and exploring alternative preservation methods might be your best bet to weather the storm. Number 7. Dairy alternatives. There's no denying it, dairy alternatives like almond, soy, oat, and coconut milk have become kitchen staples for millions of households. Market research from major firms like Euromonitor and Nielsen indicates an explosion in demand for plant-based milks, with grocery store sales and vegan blogs proving their popularity as anything but a passing trend. However, what many consumers don't realize is just how fragile the supply chain behind these non-dairy milks really is, and why they could vanish from store shelves sooner than you'd expect. Take almond milk, for example. California produces the vast majority of the world's almonds, but prolonged droughts and strict water restrictions have forced many farmers to uproot their trees. Not to mention, almond trees need bees for pollination, and the wildfires tearing through the western U.S. have been devastating for those pollinators. If these trends persist, almond milk could quickly go from abundant to scarce. Soy milk seems like a reliable alternative, but even it has its challenges. Much of the world's soy supply is dedicated to animal feed, leaving less available for food products like soy milk. On top of this, soy farming in regions like South America often faces deforestation controversies, plus increasingly unpredictable rainfall caused by climate change. These factors have already disrupted production in recent years, with signs that things could get worse. Oat milk, which has skyrocketed in popularity and was seen as a sustainable option, isn't immune either. Oats depend on stable growing conditions in northern Europe, Canada, and parts of the U.S., but are vulnerable to extreme weather events. For instance, if unexpected droughts or widespread floods hit these regions, entire oat milk production lines could grind to a halt. Beyond the raw ingredients, manufacturers face the challenge of fortifying their plant-based beverages with essential nutrients like calcium and vitamin B12. These additives often have to be imported globally, and any hiccup in sourcing them could cause production delays. Packaging is another bottleneck. Shelf-stable cartons, those boxes that keep your oat or almond milk fresh for weeks, require specific resins and paperboard materials. Supply chain experts warn that ongoing shortages in these materials, which are also in high demand across other food and beverage industries, pose a threat to the availability of these dairy-free products. For consumers turning to homemade methods, you may think DIY almond or oat milk is the solution, but here's the catch. The same climate and shipping woes impacting commercial production will also limit access to bulk raw nuts, grains, and seeds. Another growing trend is powdered plant-based milk as a backup option. While it's a great non-perishable alternative, prepping communities note that it remains costly and hard to find in many regions. If droughts worsen, wildfires continue, or global shipping sees more delays, the availability of plant-based milks could drastically shrink by next year. Shoppers scrambling for soy or almond milk in times of scarcity, as seen during recent surges in panic buying, have already foreshadowed how quickly dairy alternatives could disappear. If you rely on non-dairy milk, it's time to stock up before it vanishes entirely. Number 8. Spices and seasonings disappearing from shelves. Did you know that some of your favorite spices and seasonings might be harder to find in the coming months? That's right, those vibrant flavors that elevate your kitchen creations could vanish before March. And here's why. The world of spices is surprisingly delicate, influenced by weather patterns, global shipping struggles, and economic shifts. If you love cooking with chili powder, turmeric, black pepper, or even ginger, pay attention, because these ingredients could soon come with a much higher price tag, or disappear altogether. India, the world's top exporter of turmeric, chilies, and black pepper, has been hit hard by unpredictable monsoons, flooding, and soaring fertilizer costs. These unpredictable challenges make it tougher for farmers to meet the global demand for these essential seasonings. Meanwhile, countries in Africa producing cloves and cinnamon are facing their own set of difficulties. Cargo space has become a hot commodity, with shipping companies prioritizing heavier bulk goods over smaller, high-value items like spices. This leaves African countries like Madagascar, Zanzibar, and Cameroon struggling to get their spices onto ships and out to global markets. Southeast Asia, known for its delightful exports of ginger, lemongrass, and cardamom, is also feeling the crunch. Labor shortages, political instability in some regions, and climate-driven issues such as extreme storms are creating bottlenecks in production and transportation. The result? Fewer shipments of these aromatic ingredients reaching store shelves. Major port cities like Los Angeles, Shanghai, and Rotterdam report ongoing congestion, meaning delays and rising costs for distributors trying to move products across continents. When shipping is delayed by just a few weeks, it can cause mass panic among spice suppliers and retailers. Desperate to fulfill demand, many distributors scramble to find alternative shipping routes, driving costs sky high. Retailers often pass these costs to customers by raising prices or reducing the variety of spices available. If you've been browsing cooking or prepping communities on platforms like Reddit, you've likely seen people recommending growing basic herbs like basil, mint, or oregano at home. While this is a great tip for fresher seasonings, replicating the flavors of ginger, black pepper, or cardamom is far more challenging. Popular YouTube homesteading channels like Homestead Heart suggest buying and storing spices in bulk while they're still available, as dried spices can have a long shelf life. But the real problem lies in acquiring spices once stocks dry up. With every weather disaster or shipping hiccup, fewer shipments make it to your local grocery store. This means prices will rise, and some items could vanish entirely.